now, live from Dogleg Brewery in Fort Worth, Texas, it's time once again for You Can't Brew That on television for August 30th, 2010. Now, here are your hosts, special guest host from Split Screen, Ryan I Hope He Dies Faulkner, and as always, the Reverend Ryan Bono.
Good evening, Internet, and welcome once again to Dogleg Brewery in Fort Worth, Texas. Beside me is a brand new face for you. And other than Jen, the first person you've seen on this show that actually has hair on top of his head. So please give a big dogleg welcome to Ryan Faulkner from Split Screen, one of our sister shows on the Lone Star.
No,
Ryan,
Bono, it's okay. You don't have to clap.
Ryan, how are you doing? How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. How are you, Bono?
I'm doing great.
Great.
Ryan, he tends to be closer to the frat boy side of the beer snob frat boy spectrum, and that's cool.
I'd like to think I'm not so much of a frat boy. I'm just an educated because I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's why you're. I'm not saying you're like all the way. I'm just saying you tilt a little bit closer to that side. But
I'd agree.
I don't think there's any problem with that.
What's wrong with a good Miller Lite?
So he actually is going to be learning along with you tonight when we discuss some of the basics of brewing. He's going to be learning along with you when Jen shows up. Jen is going to bring us some beer suggestions for emailers. And we have some studio audience. That's exciting. I'm hoping that they brought homebrew. It is Ryan and Ryan. Thank you for pointing that out, Tim.
Thanks, man.
And tonight we're going to be trying Dogleg in Heat Wheat Hefeweizen. So actually, we both need to finish the beers that we started before. Ryan,
Let's do it at the same time, right? And high five.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Woo!
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, owned it.
We are ready for some in heat wheat, everybody, and I hope you are too. I hope you went to the store and picked up a bottle. This is a really nice beer. Studio audience, would you like an in heat wheat?
Whoa.
He would like an in heat wheat.
Let's accommodate this gentleman.
It looks like he brought some homebrew. I'm very, very optimistic about this.
Oh, there's no roofies in that this time, is there?
No, that's usually Vicky that slips the roofies in. Steve is not. That's not how he rolls.
Oh, he's got some Schneiderweiss. Nice.
Oh yeah, that's a very nice beer.
Sorry, Megan.
So, those of you trying at home, this is, as we were saying, it's a Hefeweizen, German-style wheat beer. And typically, this is a really nice beer to drink during the summer. Your German Hefeweizens are going to be crisp. They're going to be that looks really nice. You have a decent amount of head retention on this. Probably some spices in the aroma. A little bit hazy. You hold it up to the light. A little bit cloudy.
Yes, I see. That's very nice. It's got a fruity smell.
Very fruity smell.
Yes, the fruit's the first thing that comes to my mind. Well, actually, my mouth. Whoa.
There's a little bit of spice in the back there. Studio audience, how do you feel about this one?
I like it. I'm getting the spices a little bit more than food.
Yeah, I'm getting the spices more too. Studio audience definitely gets some. I'm getting some clove in there. Maybe there's something else. Maybe some coriander. I can't really put my finger on it.
Clove for sure.
Yeah, definitely cloves.
I definitely taste bubbles.
Yeah, you're gonna taste some bubbles. So I'm glad we have studio audience tonight. He's gonna help us with our topic. Before we move on to that, we're gonna talk about some news. And tonight's news actually comes to us from the Texas State Fair.
Uh-oh.
Texas State Fair. Ryan, why don't you tell everybody, for those of you that have never been to the Texas State Fair, maybe you live, I don't know, in Kansas City, or you live in Orlando, Florida, for instance, like NWO fan. What kind of what kind of sights do you think you would see at the Texas State Fair?
You would see the demonification of society. That is one thing you will see. You will see mullets.
Mullets, very
tank
nice.
tops, hairy backs. You will see all sorts of the matter. And another key staple of what you'll see is you'll see deep-fried X. You'll see deep-fried everything.
You name it, and they will deep fry it at the Texas State Fair. And this year, beer lovers have a reason to travel to the Texas State Fair because for the first time, they have deep-fried beer.
Beer, you say?
Beer, I say. Ryan, you sound like you did a little bit more research on this than I did. Why don't you tell everybody about how they deep fried beer?
Well, evidently it's gonna be what's that word I'm looking for? Anyway, it's gonna be like
For fatties?
yes, I guess for fatties, I'm sure. It's gonna be, of course, breaded. It's gonna be deep fried, and it's gonna be like this little pouch, this bread pouch, almost like a giant piece of ravioli that's deep fried. And then the beer's gonna be inside of it. So once you bite inside of it, you're gonna bite through the bread, and then the thing's gonna come out at you like a gusher,
Nice.
like those little candies you used to eat when you were
Very.
kids.
Something tells me, and I'm not 100% sure on this, something tells me you will not find any flying dog and heat weed
I don't think so.
coming out of these. I'm guessing you won't find any 1050.
It's probably gonna be closer to your
Bud Light?
Keystones.
Actually, I think you're right. Bud Light might be a little too classy.
Hey, we're gonna keep costs down, guys.
Lone
We're in a
Star.
recession.
Lone Star. It's gonna be it definitely Lone Star is gonna be popping out of those pouches.
Hey man, what's wrong with Lone Star? You got something against great
Nothing
state
wrong,
of
it's just
Texas?
just nice and cheap.
He is an
So-
OU fan.
So as I alluded to earlier, we were fortunate enough to get a segment from Jen for this week's show. So Rich, if you would please go ahead and get that fired up. Jen's gonna answer a few emailer questions.
Hi Kyle, hi Bono, it's Jennifer again. I've got a couple of emails from people who wanted to ask about alternatives for beers that they like. My first one is from Vanessa in Orlando, Florida, and she likes the Duchess de Bourgogne, which is a sour brown ale. I recommend the Lindemans Faro. It's a sour lambic, but it's got a little bit of tart cherry flavor in the finish. Really good, one of my favorites. Brian in Colorado Springs, Colorado, says, I like Smittix and Fat Tire. What would you recommend for alternatives for those ones? The Anderson Valley Boont Amber Ale is a really good amber, but it's going to have a much more rich malt flavor, not quite as light as a Fat Tire. And for an alternative to Smittix, one out of Scotland that I really like is the Belhaven Wee Heavy. It's a little bit higher alcohol, about 6.7%, but it's got a lot of great malt flavor. I hope y'all enjoy.
Excellent work from Jen as always.
Yes.
She did a fantastic job, and I've only had one of the beers that she brought up tonight, and that was the Anderson Valley Boont Amber Ale, and that is one that I am very pleased with. And I don't think I've ever had an Anderson Valley that I didn't like. But you had from one Friday night an Anderson Valley, I believe they're triple, and I remember you really enjoying it. But from the look of your face, you do not remember drinking it. So
Let's not bring that up.
Yeah, let's not bring that up. Friday was a fairly alcohol-soaked evening for Ryan and the brewmeister Kyle, who actually is still recovering from Friday, and that's why he couldn't make it into.
Yeah, that and the mouth sores. You know,
Yeah,
we'll keep
mouth
you up.
sores.
We'll keep you up to date on it. It's just not looking good right now.
Breaking news. It'll be developing all week. Stay tuned to doglikebury.com.
Send in your letters of of encouragement, but we hope he'll be back soon.
So, moving on to our topic for tonight, and this topic is going to lead into the rest of the season. We mentioned last week that this season we're going to be designing and brewing a beer with you, our viewing audience. But realizing that a lot of you like drinking good beer and not necessarily have brewed or do a lot of brewing. So tonight, we just kind of want to talk about some of the basics of brewing beer. And Ryan enjoys beer,
I do.
but he definitely enjoys a good beer, and he's bridging the gap, as we say here on the show, but he doesn't really have a whole lot of brewing experience, so this is going to work out really nicely, because if I throw something out there that doesn't make any sense, Ryan will be Johnny on the spot with questions. So the first thing we're going to do is, and probably in the next couple weeks here, we're going to pick a style. And we're gonna pick what we're gonna brew, because you got to know where you're going at least when you start. So that's gonna help in our recipe design. That's gonna help us draw up our malt bill, which we'll talk about here in a couple weeks. That's gonna help us draw up our hop bill, and it's basically gonna set the stage for what we do for the rest of the season. Now, first thing we're gonna do on brew day is we're going to mill our grains. And the studio audience, I think you might know why we mill our grains. Why do we mill our grains?
We mill our grains to crack them and make them available to the hot water so that the hot water enzymes can convert the starch to sweet sugars.
See, this is why it's good to have a good studio audience, because I can drink beer while he talks, and it works really nicely.
Bull!
We mill the grains, we crush the husks, and what that does is that makes all the sugars inside the husks more available for the hot water to seep out.
Makes
And
sense.
and that's our next step, actually, is we mix hot water with our milled grains and essentially create like an oatmeal.
Well, what temperature are we talking about here? First of all,
That's a very good question. Depends on what kind of mash we're going to be doing, but typically the bulk of the mash, the place where your enzymes are converting into sugars, is going to be in the 150 degree range, and the studio audience might correct me if I'm wrong on that. I believe it's in the 150 degree range. I always have a recipe in front of me. Yeah, so it's going to be in the 150 degree range, and that's something that we spoke about on our MASH episode last season, and we'll discuss it again on our MASH episode this season, and not MASH with Hawkeye, but MASH, like mashing,
well,
mashing our
is Radar going to show up?
Radar is not going to show up.
I'm Radar.
And so, essentially, you're going to mix your hot water with your grains, about 150 degrees, and that's
Okay.
going to begin the conversion process. And then you're going to mash out. And what mashing out does is you raise the temperature of the mash to 178, and that kills all the starch conversion, so that you can separate the wort from the grains, and that is what is eventually going to become your beer.
I see. Now, how long does that? You noted a raise the temperature. How long do you hold that 178?
The mash out you're going to hold for about 10 minutes, and that'll kill the conversion process.
Okay, so I'll just, I guess, note, like, whenever I have been present and helped out in brewing beers, it's very specific, the temperatures and the times you hang these things at.
It's very specific, and really we're only talking right now about just a single infusion mash. There's all manner of mashes, and in fact, Kyle and I are going to be making an English barley wine from scratch using only pale malt here in a few weeks, and that's going to involve a full decoction with several steps. Where we're going to start with a 120 degree soak, and then I believe 135, and then 150, and there's and you're right. I mean, the temperatures are very specific, so we're definitely gonna get into some of that discussion during our mashing episode. So we've now mashed our grains,
Okay.
and we have a big boil pot full of hot wort. And what the wort is, it is basically just malt juice. It's very sweet. It's very grainy.
Is that what smells so damn good?
That is what smells. Part of what smells so dang good. There's a few things going into your beer that smell really good. And so you're gonna sparge, and what that means, it's kind of, think of it as making coffee. You make coffee,
Mm-hmm.
and you pour hot water through the grains, and they soak in all the coffee flavor, and then they come out. And then your coffee grains are still good. You can pour more hot water in there and get weak coffee, but you can get more coffee out of there. So that's what we're gonna do, is we're gonna pour more hot water in,
Okay.
soak it again, and then we're going to extract that, and now we have what are called second runnings, which in the beer that we're making this January, I'm sure we're actually going to use that to go into the beer. So we've got our sweet wort now, and what we're going to do is we're going to take that sweet wort and we're going to boil it. Boil times, depending on what style you, the viewing audience, suggests and what we come up with. Boil time could go anywhere from 45 to an hour and a half. Steve, what's the longest boil you've ever done?
About 2 hours for a barley wine.
So, actually, good call. Yeah, studio audience brings up the fact that he's brewed a barley wine that needed a 2-hour boil. So
does the boil time? What specific activity dictates the alcohol content? Or is that ingredients, or is that actually process?
it's a little of both, really, as I'm running into stuff back here.
Let me help you out there, dude.
Thanks, buddy.
No problem.
It's really both. Essentially, the bigger your alcohol content, The big alcohol contents come from big malt contents typically.
Okay.
The more sugar that you've got in your beer to convert to alcohol, the more alcohol you're going to have. So, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from malt. It can come from fruit. It can come from honey. And it can come from table sugar.
That's where you get creative and where you get your different kinds of tastes.
Absolutely. Steve, what are some unusual ways you've gotten sugar into your beer?
Used everything from coconut sugar to, which doesn't taste very good, but to molasses, honey, as you said, table sugar.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it's occurring to me that you really can't hear studio audience all that well. But he's saying that he's used everything from coconut sugar to molasses, which I like to use in my beers. I like English tasting beers, and they're really big on molasses over there in England. Honey, you can put a good amount of honey. Honey will give an unpleasant flavor, or rather a flavor that takes a long time to condition when it's used in really great quantities, and that's when you start making mead, which I'm sure we'll have a mead episode at some point.
If we have a mead episode, you need to drink it out of a Viking horn.
I think that's a great idea. Write that one down, Rich, please.
I'm bringing all these ideas.
Yeah, they're very, very good to have a new face on the set. So, studio audience, why do we boil?
Well, we boil to concentrate the wort,
Okay.
so that it's more.
We boil to concentrate the wort.
Okay.
We boil to make some chemical changes in the sugars.
And what sort of chemical changes are we looking for in those sugars?
Well, first of all, we create some melanoidins, some kind of warm, toasty flavors.
Nice.
Boiling.
Melanoidins are created in the boil, which give your beer a nice toasty type of flavor, or even caramely, depending on how hot you're boiling.
Caramely. And also, we boil in order to sterilize it, to kill off all of the bad things in there, so we start fresh.
Makes sense.
And now we get to the heart of the matter. Not the number one reason we boil, but a big reason we boil is sterilization. When you boil your wort for an hour or two, there's nothing that's going to be living in there that you don't want. And
That's why we do it in America.
That is how we do in America. If you don't like it, you can just get out.
You can get out of my beer.
So, Ryan, you've brewed with us once or twice.
Yes.
And you were remarking earlier the number one thing you brought away from brewing, and what was that?
It was the specific temperatures and the time at which you held the boils and the temperatures, and the specific times in which you mix the ingredients in. It had to be added in a specific time.
Right.
With a specific maintained temperature.
So during the boil, we're going to add hops at very specific times. And the reason that we do this is that the longer a hop boils, the less flavor and aroma you're getting out of it, and the more bitterness. Now, this only goes so far. For instance, we learned the hard way just a few months ago that if you use a Chinook hop and boil it for an hour and a half, you're still going to get the flavor of Chinook hop in your beer, because Chinook is a very big hop with a very, very big flavor, and it's tough to get out. But general rule of thumb, the longer you boil your hops, the less bitterness, the more bitterness you're getting, and the less flavor. So there are as Ryan was just saying, there are very specific times when you have to add your hops. So we'll add hops at 60 for the full 60 minutes of a boil for bittering. We'll add hops at 15 minutes for flavor. A little bit of bitterness going into 15 minutes. 10 minutes. The closer you get to zero, the more you're transitioning out of the bitterness and into just flavor and aroma. And then after the wort is done boiling and you're ready to start cooling it, that is when things get really, really particular.
Okay. How so?
Because this is when things have to be sanitary.
Ooh.
Another thing that you brought up earlier is the focus on sanitation and cleanliness that goes into brewing.
I was actually astounded about how much work you got to do just to make sure all your equipment's sterilized, and even then, the amount of equipment you need to use. So
absolutely. So we're going to talk about sanitizing our equipment, which equipment has to get sanitized, because you don't have to sanitize, for instance, the mash tun, Because if you get anything bad into your wort at the very beginning, and it's just going to boil out. But it's that flame out when you stop the boil. That's when things get it gets very important to sanitize, because from now on, everything that touches that beer, you have to assume is going to end up in that beer, and you don't want bacteria, you don't want any kind of nasty stuff in there. So everything that touches it has to be sanitized from here out. Very important. We'll definitely be discussing that in this episode, in this season. So you chill it, and do you remember the chilling process and just how arduous it can be?
Not particularly, to tell you the truth. I just remember we'd put it in an ice bath.
Yeah, we used
Try
to
to
use
drop
ice
the temperature quick.
Lots of different ways to chill, and we used ice bath last time, or we used ice bath at the beginning. But the very important thing what's really important is that you kill the temperature quick, because the quicker you drop the temperature, the less chance there is that you're going to get bacteria and other kinds of nasty stuff into your beer. So you use a chiller or an ice bath or whatever it is, you kill the temperature, and we want to kill the temperature because yeast can't live in high temperatures. So if you pitch yeast into a 200 degree pot of wort, it's just going to die, and 2 weeks later all you're going to have is malt juice. And nobody wants that.
Nobody wants malt juice.
Nobody wants malt juice. Well, actually Cubans want malt juice.
Schlitz, right? That's malt.
Yeah, it is malt liquor.
Malt liquor.
Malt liquor.
Oh, right.
So, yeah. But
Me and Billy D. Williams showing up at your house wearing a sweatsuit, trying to give you some Colt 45.
Actually, we'll talk about malt juice at some point, I'm sure.
That's something for the frat boy show. We need some malt liquor.
Malt juice, though, is a beverage that Cubans are very fond of.
Really?
Yeah, if you go to Cuco's down the street here, you can get a drink called Malta, which is essentially unfermented beer.
Huh.
It's really good stuff, very sweet. I digress. So we have now chilled the beer, and we've gotten it down to a temperature where it can safely have yeast thrown on top of it. So we're going to put it into a fermenting vessel. And
A vessel, you say?
a vessel, I say. And I bet you can't guess whether or not that vessel has been sanitized.
I don't think it is. I think it's important a shoe, preferably an old running shoe.
You try that. Let me know how it works. I'm going to be pouring mine into a sanitizated vessel.
Oh, well, you do what you want. Whatever you want to do, Bono. I'm just here to say you can do it. I can do whatever I want to because I'm a big boy and I live outside of my parents' house.
Well, there it is. There it is. Ryan lives on his own. So, we're being handed some Schneider Weiss from the studio audience. I'm going to have to down this.
Yes, I will too. I have to say, Schneider Weiss is my favorite way to beat my wheat.
That is a really good point. This time of year, you always want to beat the wheat. Really helps you get past the high temperatures outside.
Thank you.
Now that one is a little fruitier. There's a little bit of malt aroma coming out of there, like a toasted or a caramelized maybe.
Maybe a little toasted.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a little bit of toasted malt coming out of it. There's some alcohol. There's a little more alcohol warmth, I think, than I mean, it's not significant, but it's there.
Because it's German, and it's got to be at least 50%.
Studio audience brings up a good point. This is a German beer that I'm drinking and being surprised by the alcohol content. Yeah, I guess that is kind of silly for me. So
with ingredients from France, no doubt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because Germans and French, they're just best friends.
Yeah, why are there trees in France?
I have no idea.
So the Germans can march in the shade.
Moving along. So
sorry, France.
And really, I was getting to the end anyway, so we got plenty of time for French and German jokes because I was getting to pretty much the final step in our process, and that is we put our freshly chilled wort, and that's what you call your unfermented beer. You put your freshly chilled wort into a fermenting vessel, and you toss some yeast on top. Oxygenate. Okay. Because yeast needs oxygen to get started. You oxygenate it, and then you just let it sit around for a couple weeks.
You can drink it right then, right?
No, you can.
Oh.
But it's not alcoholic.
Oh, well, who wants to drink it?
It tastes good.
Nah, I'll drink it. Oh, the toilet.
Yeah, so you just let it sit around for a few weeks, preferably in a cool, dark place, so it can turn from wort into beer.
And I will say that I was surprised when my first batch of beer I brewed how sensitive to light all the process is.
Very sensitive light.
I didn't have no idea. That's why they were brown bottles, right?
That's why bottles are brown, because sunlight, for instance, like even through a green bottle, sunlight will negatively affect your beer. Studio audience, and I'm asking you this time because I really don't know the answer to this. How does sunlight affect the beer?
Sunlight breaks down the hopulus, whatever, breaks down the hops. It creates a compound that is mercaptan, exactly the same thing as a smell of a skunk.
Oh, nice.
Oh, no.
Sunlight.
Yes.
Sunlight breaks the hops down and turns your beer into skunk.
Skunkinates.
If you taste a light struck Heineken, and when you open it, you smell
Roses.
smoke, that's what's happened.
There it is.
Oh.
Yeah, if you ever open your Heineken, or we're not picking on Heineken here. Well, what's another beer that comes in green bottles? Rolling Rock.
Grolsch.
Grolsch. I'm sorry?
That's true. Well, no, it's green. It's
I
green.
think one of them's green. Anyway, it's yeah. If you
Corona,
ever
yes.
open a bottle and it tastes and it has a skunky smell, skunky taste, that means that it's probably been exposed to light. Thank you very much for your help on that one, studio audience. So that's those are the basics.
Wow, I feel so much smarter.
You should. You should. I mean, just being in the presence of internet TV stardom should really. You really should feel like your intelligence has been boosted. But beyond that, learning the basics of beer brewing.
Wow, I can totally go out and brew my first batch of beer right now.
How are you liking your Schneiderweiss?
Oh, are you kidding me? So this is probably single-handedly. I might not be a beer connoisseur like most of our viewers, but I do know that Schneiderweiss is probably my favorite beer I've ever tasted. Just the normal one. Now this is a little bit different. It's a lot more hoppy, but it's still Schneiderweiss. It's still good. I love it. It's great. The end.
You know, I've been a big fan of Schneiderweiss for. No, yeah, I typically don't like German beers, but this one has always really appealed to me for some reason. I'm going to go with the 8.2% alcohol content.
It's not bad either.
As one of the reasons that this one has always appealed to me.
Well, it's the pumpkin spice.
So coming up next week, everyone, Kyle should be back from his very brief hiatus.
Hopefully those mouth sores heal pretty good.
We're really hoping. Stay tuned for updates.
Yeah.
We're hoping to get another segment from Jen. So that's something you can look forward to for next week.
I'm sure.
And what's a beer that you like, Ryan?
I like Keystone.
Let's taste. No, not Keystone.
Oh.
It's something for the tasting.
Oh, okay. You're asking the wrong person. I'm really not the guy to ask.
Well, let's.
I'm still. I like that Nocturnum Delirium.
That was a very, very nice beer.
Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed that. We had that Friday, or
Yeah,
me
we
and Bono
had
had that Friday
Delirium
night. Yeah.
Nocturnum Friday night.
Yes.
Very nice beer. Actually, next week is going to be our first broadcast during the month of September, and this may be confusing, but which is the month when Oktoberfest is celebrated. So let's do
Tired head.
Let's do Spaten Oktoberfest next Monday.
Sold. I'm in.
Sold.
How could I miss it?
Run out, buy some Spaten Oktoberfest. Very nice beer. It's what actually got me into bridging the gap. I was full on frat boy beer until I discovered Spaten Oktoberfest.
Whoa.
And I never turned back.
Oh my gosh, you had that one romantic weekend, and it bought you dinner, took you to the beach.
Played some Marvin Gaye, and
Yeah.
I was just yelling.
Then the next morning you woke up and it was gone.
I was putty in his hands.
Oh no. I'm so sorry, dude. You okay?
Uh,
You alright?
it's tough to talk about.
Okay.
It's tough. So, Rich, I think we're about ready to get out of here. Ryan, I hope you know our catchphrase well enough to help me out with this one. But if not, I'll finish it up because we are not professionals.
So please, try this at home.
Oh God, that is awful.